Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Lineup Lab. Tonight we're going to talk about cash games, and I'm going to review a few concepts for cash games by looking at my double up lineup on DraftKings for week one. And we're going to talk about some strategies that you can use for cash games that are totally opposed to GPPs but are essential for making that consistent cash game lineup that's going to cash week after week. So here's my lineup that's in a $10 double up on DraftKings. And as you can see, there's a few things with this lineup that might pop out to you already. The first thing is that I paid up for a quarterback. And this was actually something I did on purpose and something that I usually don't do as much in GPPs. The reason that I like to pay up in a quarterback in cash games and not GPPs is that a quarterback has really small variation compared to other players in daily fantasy football. A quarterback is probably going to have a range of scoring within 12 to 28 fantasy points, and are not going to go much higher or much lower than that. As opposed to a wide receiver who could score 6 points by catching 3 balls, like Delaney Walker got 7 points, or they could go off and score 35 points like Willie Snead. There's a much wider range of variation in their scoring. And so in certain conditions, I'm going to be a little more willing to pay up for a quarterback. And Russell Wilson was really my favorite quarterback to the slate, regardless of price. And given just the other value at positions, I felt compelled to pay up for him. Now, it didn't really pay off. He actually only had 14 points. But I did like the play, and in my defense, he did get injured. I think in the second quarter, had some strange ankle injury. He got stepped on. His foot got stepped on, and was really immobile for the rest of the game. But dual threat quarterbacks with high projections like him are really quite good for cash games because A, they're going to get you a lot of points, and B, they're not going to totally fail because they're going to get those 20, 30, 40 yards rushing. The second concept for cash games that is all through this lineup is running back value. In cash games especially, you really just want to look for that running back value because running backs are very touchdown dependent, so you cannot rely on them to score fantasy points consistently. So what you want to do is just make sure you're getting that good value, make sure you're getting people who are going to catch a few balls, especially on DraftKings, and make sure your running back isn't killing your lineup. And so I found a lot of value on DraftKings yesterday. One player was Spencer Ware, who, he's a little more involved in the passing game in the preseason, so I was confident he's going to catch a few balls. It's really cheap at $4,400. I mean, obviously this wasn't a like under the radar player or anything. He was owned 56% of the time. But he was someone that had great value I really liked. Same goes for Latavius Murray. He was only $5,600, which was quite cheap. Knew he's going to catch a few balls, although he actually caught one, and kind of disappeared in the fourth quarter, which was unexpected. And I mean literally, he literally did not even play in the fourth quarter. So that's something I'm going to look into. But I did like him at the time with a good matchup against a really poor defense, someone who I thought was going to get a lot of running attempts. And the last one was someone I actually added into my lineup last second, and that was TJ Yeldon. So, like Mark Ingram yesterday morning, Yeldon had some really interesting morning news. The second running back on Jacksonville, Chris Ivory, actually got hospitalized and was not going to play in the game. And this situation, I want to talk about this for a second, because this situation is different than the Ingram situation. And you're going to get situations like this a lot throughout the season, and it's good to make the distinction. So in the Ingram situation, CJ Spiller was inactive. And so we're like, oh, okay, wow, CJ Spiller's inactive. Ingram's going to get more carries. Maybe he's going to be more in the third down role. But the thing that we're overlooking here is that, well, wait a second, the coaches knew Spiller was going to be inactive. They just purposely are not playing him. So they probably have some sort of game plan involving other running backs. In Jacksonville's case, however, they don't have a game plan for Chris Ivory being out. They didn't expect him to get sick and go to the hospital. And so they're not going to be as willing to insert the third string running back, Denard Robinson, into that lineup. So we can actually safely assume in this situation, more than Ingram, that Yeldon's production, his carries, his third down ability is going to go up. His goal line carries are going to go up. So Yeldon was only 4,100. It's really cheap for a starting running back who's probably going to get 70% of snaps. He catches balls. He had an okay matchup, at least he was at home versus the Packers. I thought this was great value that I just did not want to pass up for my cash game lineups. So I think in general in your cash games, you definitely want to look for that running back value. And you just don't need to rely on, okay, who's a sure thing, because you just don't know. Just get the guys who seem like solid plays, who are those guys who are going to get number one running back snaps and are actually really cheap. And then lastly, the third concept, and this goes for wide receiver and especially tight end, is on DraftKings, you want to look for these wide receivers who aren't as touchdown dependent and are more guys who are going to catch a lot of balls. And that's what I tried to do with my wide receivers here. Julio Jones I just simply used because I projected him really well and I had a lot of money on the table, so I thought I'd spend up for him, and Antonio Brown was not on DraftKings main slate. And one guy that I really liked that I think probably went under-owned in cash games, and he didn't have a great game, but this was exactly the type of line I expected out of him, was Michael Crabtree. Crabtree is a guy who actually caught 85 balls last season, and he was going up against a really bad defense. Oakland were underdogs in the game. He is only 5,500, and he was not going to go up against Delvin Breaux. So this was awesome value for a guy who has a history of catching a lot of balls. The game flow suggested he was going to catch a lot of balls, and he had a good matchup. I just really love this play, and Crabtree's the exact type of guy that you're looking to use in cash. Some guy who's going to get something like 7 receptions, 6 receptions, safely in games like this. And I want to illustrate this point as well for someone like Delaney Walker, because with tight end especially, you're going to find a lot of guys who are just way more touchdown dependent, which means way more variance. And with a guy like Walker, who I think 94 receptions last season, he's a guy who's going to I can rely on to catch a lot of balls from game to game. Now, he didn't have a good game. He only had 3 receptions, and I would think this is probably the worst iteration of Delaney Walker we were going to get on Sunday. But when you have a tight end that you can rely on to catch a lot of balls, like a Jordan Reed or Delaney Walker, these guys are really good for cash games, and he's really not that expensive at 4,500. And he's someone who's not going to put up like 2 or 4 or 5, 6 points. He's going to usually get me 10 plus. So I really think that when you're looking at tight end, you really want to look at these receptions. And lastly, we moved to Willie Snead, who actually was just a fill. I'd filled out my entire lineup, and I just had, I think, 48 or 4,900 on the table, and I thought, all right, I'll just go Snead. I liked him as a play. And he's a guy who we know we're getting same offense. I think knowing that was positive, but honestly, I just played him because I played him. He ended up being my best receiver. So sometimes you have to get lucky as well. But even so, even if I didn't use him, I still think I would have cashed anyway. So, and lastly, Cardinals D. I didn't try to get too creative here. The line had moved quite a bit towards the Cardinals over the week and on Sunday morning. So, and Rob Gronkowski was out. That offense just didn't look good. That offensive line was a little banged up. I think this was a really safe play. Didn't get me a lot of points, but I would do it all over again. I think Seahawks were a decent play as well, but I think I barely couldn't afford them. So it was just sort of play. Let's take a favorite against a team that's going to have a banged up offensive line. I think teams that you know are going to get a lot of sacks are really great defense, special teams, cash plays. So just keep that in mind when you're looking for your cash. So just to review the concepts. Concepts for cash games. These are the 3 keys to making a great cash game. 1, pay up for QB if it seems like the right move. I mean, not always, but be more willing to pay up for that QB that you know is going to get you that consistent production. The second thing is find those value running backs. Find those starting running backs who are great value, who catching balls is a plus, but just don't try to spend up too much at running back if you can. And then third is look for wide receivers who are going to catch a lot of balls and who are not touchdown dependent. If you get the guys who are going to get catches, you're not going to have to rely on touchdowns, which have a lot of variation. And you're going to have those wide receivers that have consistent 12, 13, 14, 15-point games, which is really all you're looking for in cash games. And it is especially true for the tight end. So I hope this helped you see what kind of cash game strategy you should be using for week to week. And hopefully next week you can see results. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please click the subscribe button and look out for more videos from me later in the week. Thanks, guys, and good luck.